Okay, good morning everyone and welcome to CITB NI's Business Improvement event covering CSR scheme changes. I'm Amanda Stevenson, I'm a project manager with the Construction Industry Training Board, and I'd like to welcome onto the webinar this morning Jonathan Coggy. Jonathan is a Federation Manager with the CEF, and they are kindly supporting the CSR scheme supporting this morning event. So good morning, Jonathan. We also have Lynn Booth, our grants manager at CITB NI on, and Lynn's going to talk about the grants in relation to the CSR, following on from Jonathan and his session on the scheme changes. We also have William McMullen, a director at CITB NI, and William's on, and he will lead the Q&A for any questions that you may have throughout this morning's session.
Good morning, everybody, and apologies for the lighting. I look like I'm half in shadow.
So just moving on then, our programme for this morning, as you can see, just following off the welcome, I am going to do a quick update on CITB's products and services. Just letting you know, for all of the registered employers on here, the benefits of being registered with ourselves. And but before I do that, I just want to kick off with about a bit of housekeeping. So your mic and your webcam are automatically off. In preparation for the Q&A session at the end, which will follow on from the CSR grant scheme, CSR scheme changes and the grants. If you put all of your questions into the Q&A function, in the Zoom function, there is the Q&A and the option to do that in that function. So if you put your questions in there, then those will be addressed at that session at the end of this morning's presentations. This morning's webinar is being recorded, so you will get a link to the recording and you can share that with your colleagues as well. You will also be sent a link to the evaluation form, so we really greatly appreciate if you go on and complete that evaluation form after this morning's event, and all feedback is greatly appreciated. So we are due to end the session at 11:30 this morning. So just moving on, and as I said to you, I'm going to really provide you with a very quick update on our products and services. We do have a full online version of our products and services and everything that you can avail of on our website in the training section. If you go in there, you'll find that full presentation and you can just run through it and see all of the full details and links to everything that I talk about. Some of it here but more on that presentation. So certainly take time and have a look at it, because everything is on there in full. So just by way of an update then, our scaffolding courses, we continue to deliver the scissors scaffolding training courses at Nuts Corner Training Centre. We offer the tube and fitting, the system scaffolding and advanced scaffolding. Now these would be quite heavily booked up courses, so if you have any particular time in mind and people that you want to get trained up, just give us a call, contact us and get yourselves booked on. Our health and safety awareness courses are a suite of courses that we can either deliver in our mobile training unit, which we endeavour to try to get to any site in Northern Ireland, or we can deliver them at your premises, providing you have suitable accommodation to be able to do this. We can send our trainer out. So these courses would be the likes of safe working at heights, manual handling, abrasive waste, that type of thing. They're all CPD accredited, and for every person that goes through that training, there is a certificate of attendance for your records. So the mobile training unit is free to all registered employers, and so is the option to have the trainer on site. And the mobile training unit seats up to 16 people. Even if you have small numbers and you say, well, I can't justify, or we can't justify bringing this the mobile training unit out to your site, just let us know what your training needs are. Maybe there's another employer in your local area who you can match you up with and maybe take it to a mutual site or whatever, or say we can come to your premises. There's always an option, and we'll do our best to accommodate whatever your needs are. So in terms of our business improvement events, one of which you're on here this morning, we have launched our programme for this training year. So we're on total at the moment of about 16 events, and these are covering topics such as digital and social media marketing, data protection, digital construction, carbon management, footprinting, construction law update, ISOs, waste management, and that type of thing. So the full list is on the events section of our website. So just go on there and have a look, and feel free to book on to whatever courses you like. They are free to all registered employers. It's an easy booking There's an easy booking option just through Eventbrite. We're also running this session again as another business improvement event in person at Nuts Corner at CITB NI on the 7th of November. So if you want to, if any of your colleagues want to come along to that session again, it's the same session as we're doing here this morning, then certainly let them know about that. And again, click onto that, you'll get the full details on the event section of our website. We're also running a number of heritage training events as well, and these are well underway. These sessions are all open to all wishing to learn more about working with older buildings and materials and cover topics such as thatching, conservation principles, blacksmithing, traditional paints and finishes, and lime. Again, full details of these and how to book and everything's on the events section of our website. So if this is something that you want to find out a bit more about, maybe get a taster for different aspects of the heritage, the built heritage sector, then certainly have a look at these, because there's probably or maybe something on there that you would want to book on to. We're delivering an MVQ level 4 diploma in construction site supervision for highway maintenance and repair, and this is really aimed at potential and for supervisors, site supervisors in the highway maintenance and repair sector, and it's the achievement of the MVQ level 4, the recogniser to the CSR CSCS Supervisors Gold Card. The qualifications here are delivered via technical workshops and online assessments. This course has just got underway. You could, if it's something you're interested in, contact us to see if it's something you could get on to. And if not, then if you let us know that you're interested in it, then we can register your details and get back to you. Because the more demand then, obviously then we would look to run something similar again for future courses. We have a simulated construction site and work is ongoing on this here. It's at Nuts Corner Training Centre, and this is a facility for you construction employers to use, and also we're intending to provide a suite of training that can be delivered on it, but it's for you to come up and train your workforce, maybe demonstrate best practice and methods of construction, maybe bring along product manufacturers, do demonstrations on whatever, but that facility is available for you up at Nuts Corner. And the sort of training that can be done on that would be like brick and block work, external installation, rendering, above and below ground, that type of thing, utility texture, curbing and flagging, manufacturers demonstrations and sewage pipe work. So there's quite a range that can be done on that, and we're always we can always add to it, just depending on the needs of the industry. By way of a grants update, I'm just going to cover briefly the grant scheme for this year. We've made 1.9 million available for the grant scheme for this year, and the grants range from £15 right up to £2,000, depending on the category of grant. Terms and conditions apply, like with any grant scheme, and you can download these from our website. There is a grant cap on short duration training only, and it's capped at 100% of levy paid, and if you don't pay, it's capped at £500. In terms of the apprentice support, we have, and this is really one I really want to highlight, if you're thinking about employing an apprentice and putting them through an approved apprenticeships, either NI programme or a high level apprenticeship programme, there's a potential grant there of up to £6,500 for the apprentice on achievement of the different qualifications and seeing right through to the end of their apprenticeship programme. If for an apprenticeships NI where they achieve a level 2 and a level 3, there's also potential there for an additional £1,500 from the Department for the Economy, and so that's really making a total grant there to you, the employer, of £8,000 once that apprentice is through their apprenticeship programme. So a good incentive if you're thinking about employing an apprentice, no better time for the funding that is available. And there's no cap on apprentice grants, so you would get the full amount of money there available to you. Also, for apprentice support, it's not just for craft apprentices in terms of bricklaying, plastering, joining. It can be for any apprentice in your business. As we all know, construction's more than just that. It's about your finance side, IT, especially now, and all sorts. So any apprentice that you have, you want to take on, there is that option for that grant support. So really, to keep everything right, I say your passport to claiming all of our products and services is to ensure that you complete and return your annual return form. There is a deadline for this. It's usually the end of August each year, and you can also do it online. So I would encourage you to make sure that you do that each year, because that's definitely one of the conditions for the grant, and it's safe for available all our products and services, and I can't stress that enough. I just want to highlight one of the other services that we provide, and this is the Adoptive School Scheme. We currently have 78 schools sitting waiting for an employer to pair with to promote construction careers. This is the scheme, and it's all about pairing and making sort of those connections with schools in either your local or work area to promote construction careers. And we know that now, obviously, a lot of CSR rates around engaging with communities and schools and informing them of what you're doing in their area and stuff. So, and we also, with all the skills needs within the industry, we need more employers to sign up to this. Say we have 78 schools. I don't have 78 employers. I really need more employers. So I'm asking you, anybody on here today, to get in touch. It's a very simple process. You just fill in a registration form and just say that you could potentially offer site visits, maybe sponsor an award, go in and do a talk or a presentation, attend a careers even at a school. You're not held to that in any way. We would just like to see you certainly doing something. If you want to pair with a school, we'll send you the full list of schools, and then you can have a look and see who's in your area and just make contact with the school and have a contact name there for each school and work away. And we'll support you in everything that you do by promoting what you do. And also we potentially could provide you with materials and publications to help support your careers promotion. So certainly give me a call if it's something you're interested in finding out more about. But we really do need employers to sign up. It would be great to get a police school somebody to pair with. And considering that they are interested in promoting construction careers, is fantastic for us, the industry. So that's our contact details. And we have our grants@, levy at, and general info at email addresses there if you want to get in touch with us. Also our phone number. We're also on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. So if you want to join us on any of those mediums, then you can keep in touch with everything that's going on with our science. Okay, so that's me. I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm now going to hand over to Jonathan, who's going to take you through the CSR scheme changes. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Amanda. And just share my screen here 1 second, get the slideshow going. Start would be a good place. There we go. Hello, everyone, and thanks very much to Amanda, William, and Lynn at CITB for inviting me along today to talk about the Construction Skills Register. My name is Jonathan Cahy. I am Federation Manager at the CEF, which is the certified representation body for the construction industry in Northern Ireland. I started at CEF as a graduate trainee way back in December 2005. I think I weighed about 7 stone and had a full head of hair. So I think that tells you all you need to know about the last 17 or 18 years. But my role at the minute involves managing both CSR and Safety Search, which is the third-party health and safety management system. I also facilitate our health and safety committee, amongst other things. So as I say, thanks very much for inviting me along, and hopefully you'll leave with a better understanding of the changes to CSR. I thought I would start really just with a quick summary of the running order, just so that you know what to expect. So I'll begin by spending a bit of time highlighting the Building Mental Health Alliance and the introduction of mental health as a topic covered by CSR. I know it's not strictly what you've come to hear about, but mental ill health is such a big issue at the minute. It seemed just too good an opportunity to miss while you're all here. Then I'll move on and set the context with a bit of information about CSR and where it's come from. And this will include some information on mutual recognition, which, as you know, is something that's important to lots of people. I'll explain the reasons and the reasons the changes are being introduced. I'll run through a timeline of the main changes, highlight some of the guidance that we have produced to assist the industry, and then I'll finish with some ongoing plans, and then you will have the opportunity to grill me at the end, but hopefully that won't be the case. So yeah, as I say, it's always good to start a presentation on a positive note. So I want to spend a little time talking about the Building Mental Health Alliance. So what is BMHA and what's it all about? So it was launched on the 10th of October 2022, World Mental Health Day. And it's hard to believe that it's nearly a year ago that took place. But really what it is, it's a collaboration of industry bodies, large contractors, and other workplace health and safety organisations. So ourselves, CEF, are represented along with the Northern Ireland Safety Group, FMB, the Mineral Products Association, Northern Ireland Construction Group, Build Health, and then employers Graham, Farrens, McLaughlin, Harvey, and Henry Brothers, and of course the CITB were obviously involved. And we work together with the aim to create better mental health awareness and support and training for everyone working in the Northern Ireland built environment sector. It was formed because there was a recognition really that mental health in the construction industry in Northern Ireland had to be addressed. We've all seen statistics, and it's obviously a big issue. There's a horrible statistic that in the UK and Ireland, there are 2 construction workers every day that take their life, which is just absolutely horrendous. We're not experts, but we can use our kind of reach and influence to reduce the stigma, which is a massive thing. Going back to collaboration then, information sharing is going to be key going forward with this. We've established relationships with 11 local charities or organisations that can offer guidance and direct help. And really, the Alliance is a focal point for all that information and guidance. So over the first year, there have been some initial outputs, and that includes an awareness video that was produced by CITB, and that demonstrates to construction workers the importance of looking out for their colleagues, and that support exists for those experiencing mental ill health. If you haven't seen it, I would really strongly advise that you do check it out. It's a great resource. I always think videos are good anyway, but this one in particular, it's local actors, and it's really good to have a local voice, because lots of the time it's, it would be maybe an English accent or whatever, and it really hits home that it could be the guy sitting next to you on site, and good to share with your staff. There's also a toolbox talk that can be delivered on site, and just again aims to raise awareness of issues that could be impacting those working on site and how they can get help. There's the CSR mental health module that's been introduced, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a second. But more recently, just in the last few weeks really, there has been a website launched, and you can see it on the slide there. It's hosted by the Northern Ireland Safety Group, but really what it does, first off, it has access to 3 24/7 helplines, and it also signposts to organisations that can provide advice and support in areas such as anxiety, depression, suicide, addiction, and financial worries. There's other stuff on there as well. And as an easy way to get to the website, we have produced a QR code you can see as part of the logo there. So there's a strap line that you're only 2 clicks away from help. And it's really, I suppose it is, easy access is key. We want this to become really well recognised on site. We have site posters available, and we've actually produced hard hat stickers so that they can be put on everybody's hard hats. So we're starting to give those out throughout the industry, but certainly do get in touch with the safety group or CEF if you do need to get some of those resources. Really, as I say, we're just trying to grow awareness, and by doing that, reduce and stigma around mental health. There are some launch events happening in Newton Abbey and Omagh on the 11th and 12th of October. There are some details on that on the CEF website if you want to know more about it and maybe come along and support. So selfishly, I'm going to just take a couple of minutes to talk about the CSR mental health module in a bit more detail. So as I say, it was introduced as part of the Mental Health Alliance, and they were looking for easy wins at the start, and CSR really ticked the box there because it's a great way about getting basic info to lots of people. It's a very basic overview, but again, it's really just about talking about mental health, trying to normalise it and reduce the breaking down the stigma. It's initially been included in the operatives course, and that's really just because that's the course that's delivered to the largest number of candidates, and since it was launched in October, November last year, there's been somewhere between 16 and 18,000 people that have received this basic training on mental health, which in itself is just great. That again, it's just getting it out there so that it's there for people to hear. I'm going to take you through the learning outcomes very briefly, but it generally highlights signs of mental health mental ill health, to look out for and signpost candidates to some of the organisations and charities that can provide help. And there are lots of those charities doing a really amazing job. Before we brought it out, we had the content checked by a mental health professional from Inspire Wellbeing. They also provided training for our trainers because we wanted them to feel confident delivering what can be a difficult subject, and also to know what to do if say somebody on the course after made some sort of declaration. So we've had training for them. We do plan to roll it out to the other sort of levels of training, but there's a saying, fit your own oxygen mask first. Those with more responsibility, they have to look after themselves first ultimately, but they will also have to concentrate on, there's the duty to protect their employees. So we're looking at rolling that out further. This then, just very, very quickly, before we move on to CSR changes, is the learning outcomes. I don't plan on delivering the training today because I'm not a trainer and would do a disservice to those who are qualified to deliver it. But it's a 5 to 10 minute module. It's a basic overview, as I've said. The first topic delivered on the day, and that's really just to highlight how important it's been. The feedback has been pretty good. I think people are engaging. There was the worry that people would just sit and say nothing, but it has got people talking about it, which is obviously the aim of what we set out to do. You can see, I'm not going to read through them there, but you can see the learning outcomes. It's really sort of mental health 101, just the kind of really basic sort of areas that you would like to see covered. So I'm just going to flick through a couple of slides here. And yes, I suppose this is really the main part of the presentation and what you've come to hear about. So that obviously the changes to CSR. I want to set a bit of context, really. I suppose it's important just to kind of set that context before I get into the nitty-gritty. So CSR is the card scheme for the construction industry in Northern Ireland. It's used where there's building, civil engineering, maintenance, workshops. It's probably fanned out a bit more than traditional construction over the years. It was launched way back in 1997, so over 25 years old. It's owned by the Joint Council, which is made up of both employer and employee representatives. The employer reps are appointed by CEF and the employee reps are appointed by trade unions. CFS, Construction Federation Services, administers the scheme on behalf of Joint Council, and so ultimately they're responsible for production and issue of cards and all the stuff that is associated with that. The scheme covers roles from across the industry, from apprentice right up to senior director and all that's in between there. Obviously, a key part of it is health and safety training, and the different levels of health and safety training are operative, supervisor, manager, and senior manager. It's historically sort of been based on assessment of skills, but it's moving towards qualifications, and I'm obviously going to cover more of that in a bit more detail later on. It has been driven, I suppose, by its inclusion as a requirement in Build Safe initiative, Build Safe NI initiative, which was many years ago coming together of employers, employees, government, and various other stakeholders to reduce injuries and fatalities in the construction industry here in Northern Ireland. CSR or equivalent is a contract requirement on public sector construction contracts as a result of its inclusion in the Build Safe initiative. CSR isn't a legal requirement, but it is seen now, I suppose, as best practice and almost a passport to employment in the construction industry. It's not often you see a job advert that doesn't ask for a CSR card as part of the application process. So a bit more big picture stuff. So obviously training is delivered by, we have 27 accredited training providers that are accredited by CFS. They are based all across Northern Ireland just to give easy access to candidates across the province. The training providers we have a service level agreement with them that they're required to comply with, and that outlines all the requirements they have to meet in relation to like the venue, the qualifications of the trainer, all the sort of admin processes behind it. They also have to have ISO 9001 for CSR admin, and all of this stuff is really just geared towards ensuring consistency towards the network, so that if you have training in Belfast, it's the same as training that you get in Enniskillen or Derry or whatever. So we also regularly survey employers that send their employees on the scheme or the training, sorry, and that's again really just to try and ensure that we can react and we're providing a high level of service. There's currently about 80,000 active cards at any one time, and I suppose obviously there was a bit of a break for COVID, but last year cards kind of returned to pre-COVID levels and sort of continued to do that this year as well. I've included a slide here on mutual recognition because it's something that we get asked about a lot on the phones and stuff. But I also mention mutual recognition, because it's important. Because Northern Ireland, the construction industry obviously exports a lot of labour to neighbourhood jurisdictions, and the airports on a Sunday evening is testament and evidence of that. But recognition is also important in the context of why the changes are being introduced, which I'm going to cover off in the next slide. But just a little bit more on the recognition. So CSR is one of 38 schemes in the CSCS Alliance. And we are all working towards, and it's part of the changes, minimum standards. But that means that CSR is accepted in GB. CSR then again is the only training that's accepted as equivalent to SafePass in the Republic. And that relates specifically to the CSR one-day course for operatives. So SafePass is required on site down south. The CSR card will be accepted if you've completed the one-day CSR course for operatives. And the easy way to understand that is on the back of the card, it will say accredited safety training. We've also liaised with Solus to provide a list of the accepted cards for them to provide to their training organisations. So, it's clear that there's no ambiguity. If you turn up with a card, you shouldn't have any issue getting on site. So it's all really straightforward so far, right? But where it starts to get complicated is that in Republic, they also have a card scheme called CSCS, but it's not related to CSCS, the big GB-based scheme. Not sure why they both decided to go with the same name just to complicate things, but anyway. But under that, so there's a piece of legislation in the south, so Schedule 5 of the Safety, Health and Welfare Work Construction Regulations 2013, that includes a list of what they call prescribed occupations that require specific training, and that includes plant, scaffolding, roofing, sign lighting and guarding are the kind of main ones, I think. They're all listed on the Solus website if you want to check that out. But anybody working in one of those occupations is legally required by that piece of legislation to hold a Solus CSCS registration card and have the training associated with that. So that means that CSR plant cards, for example, and some of the other areas that I talked about just a minute ago, aren't accepted in the south of Ireland. We have previously had a kind of workaround in place whereby there was an EU directive, the recognition of qualifications, so that if you had a qualification, and obviously for plant cards you're required to have a level 2 NVQ, that would have been accepted as on a temporary basis. But because of Brexit, that has changed. You can still submit information to Solus and they will review it, but anecdotally we're hearing that ultimately at the minute that results in the requirement of further training at their training facility in Mount Lucas in County Offaly. We liaise with Solus all the time, and I know they have further changes that are going through the Irish Parliament at the minute about licence to practice. Once obviously anything changes there, my understanding is there's more of a chance of mutual recognition or some form of mutual recognition when this gets through and is introduced. So obviously we'll keep an eye and keep liaising with Solus on that and update the industry when it comes in place. And then just to finish off on this slide, I suppose in relation to the kind of recognition and portability, actually CSR is in a pretty unique position in that the majority of our cards, and I say majority, it's not all, but the majority of cards are accepted across the entire UK and Ireland, which isn't the case for SafePass and CSCS. Okay, so I want to just provide a little bit of clarity on why the decision to implement the changes was taken. And I often get the impression, if I speak to people on the phone, that they think that it was me personally that kind of dreamt up these changes. But I just want to, on the record, say that no, it wasn't me personally. But so where it's come from is way back in 2015, the Construction Leadership Council, which is a body made up of representatives of the England and Wales construction industry and the UK government. They announced their One Industry logo requirements as an action from their industrial strategy, Construction 2025. So the aim of this really was to have industry in England and Wales, including trade associations, contractors, clients, and government, to specify and promote card schemes that had the CSCS logo on them for all public projects with no equivalents. And the objective, I suppose, of that really, what they were saying, was to provide clients, employers and contractors with a consistent means of recognising that an individual has achieved the agreed qualification in the occupation they're working in, and give industry confidence in a single brand. So it's, there's so many card schemes, and it can be difficult for employers to understand if they're accepted or not accepted, or where they fall on the scale of training. So they want to unite under this sort of single brand. And I suppose, where does CSR come into this? So CSR has always had the CSCS logo on our cards, because we were one of the original CSCS affiliates from many years ago. And for the reasons mentioned in the previous slide there on recognition and portability of the workforce. So the Joint Council decided that CSR needed to comply with the requirements to ensure that the CSCS logo remained on CSR cards, so that the cards continued to be accepted in GB. Failure to do that would have meant that anybody with a CSR card would not have been able to access the sites in GB. As part of this, the CLC set down a number of minimum requirements that had to be met in order to retain the CSCS logo. And there's obviously more detail coming up in the rest of the presentation, but that's really what has driven all these changes to CSR. It's about the sort of minimum requirements that all schemes across the UK have to meet. Schemes are audited annually just to ensure that they maintain compliance with the requirement. And just before the summer there, CSR underwent the audit and received confirmation that we continue to comply with the requirements, which is great news. As part of the audit process, which is directly with CLC, I did mention that there has been significant kickback from industry about the changes, and the auditor, he acknowledged that we weren't the only scheme to have raised these issues. There were several other schemes that had, but ultimately CLC wouldn't be changing their position. So, there's no chance that this is going to suddenly there's going to be a change type thing. And I suppose the impact of, the Grenfell disaster and then the Hackett report, it's really sort of shone a light on confidence in the construction industry. Obviously, the Building Safety Act has started to come into force in England, and it's likely it will follow at some stage in Northern Ireland. And really, I suppose schemes are going to have to continue to change to meet the ever-changing needs of both government and industry. And I suppose one of those things potentially would be like evidence of ongoing CPD on cards. So there may be more changes to come. Okay, so this is the first of 3 slides on the changes so far. So I'm not going to go through each point in detail, but I suppose the point of this slide is to highlight that the changes started way back in 2016, and industry and training providers were made aware of the changes as part of a 3-year plan to 2020, way back in mid-2017. I suppose one last point maybe on this slide would be that the first change you can see there was the introduction of the the academically qualified person, professionally qualified person card, or AQP and PQP. These were introduced as an alternative to manager and senior manager cards for those with construction degrees, HNDs, HNCs, or membership of professional bodies. But I suppose the point I'm trying to make really is that it's only relatively recently that candidates have started to look and take notice of these cards and apply for them in any sort of significant number, and it just kind of illustrates that change come in November 2016. So change can be a bit of a slow burner, really, is the point I'm trying to make. So hurtling on then through the changes. So I suppose the first big change really in the move towards qualifications was the removal of occupational assessments for managers and senior managers in April 2018. And those applying for a new manager or senior manager card were required to have a level 6 or level 7 NVQ or equivalent from this point onwards. We are always keen, to introduce other options. We don't want to prevent people from getting cards. So I previously highlighted the AQP and PQP cards. Then the experienced manager card was introduced, and that's really for someone who, if they're signed up to an NVQ but haven't completed it, their cards issued to the candidate so that they continue to be carded, obviously, and it recognises their experience and that they're working towards the qualification. It also buys them some time, and I would imagine that these are likely to become more used the closer we get to the deadline at the end of next year. But I just want to highlight that they're a one-time only card. They can't be renewed. You have to upgrade once you achieve the NVQ at that stage. Okay, so even more changes. So I suppose the changes really started to pick up pace in April 19. There was the long existing GCO card, and that was replaced with the labourer card. And this was again to meet one of the CLC requirements that the available cards for new entrants, apprentices, trainees, labourers, or workers in the process of obtaining formal qualifications will be clearly and easily identifiable. So when this was introduced, Joint Council decided to introduce another card, which is the Health and Safety Training card. And there's significance here, I suppose, because the Health and Safety Training card doesn't meet the CLC requirements and doesn't have the CSCS logo on it. But I suppose the GCO had become a bit of a catch-all card. It was issued to plumbers and electricians who didn't fall under the remit of Joint Council, but it agreed that they needed the health and safety training in order to comply with the Build Safe NI initiative for health and safety training. The health and safety training card, remains acceptable in the Republic because it's based on completion of the one-day health and safety training for operatives, which has the mutual recognition agreement with SafePass that I talked about previously. So that, I suppose, that's the card if you want to simply show that the person has completed health and safety training, and it doesn't have any reference to their competence or the role that they have. That's the card they can do. Then just the last bit on this slide, really, there was kind of two watershed moments, really, I suppose, could be described as, that followed in quick succession. First was the removal of remaining occupational assessments, so any new cards would have to be issued on the basis of a qualification. And then I suppose the biggest announcement of all was about NVQs or equivalent for all skilled cards from the end of 2024, which what the industry was informed about that in 2019. So I think probably the next two slides are the most important. So if I've bored you to death, set up and take note to these next two slides, really. So two CLC requirements are important here. The first is that they say that a minimum standard for skilled occupations is an NVQ level 2 qualification relevant to the occupation the person is working in, plus a separate health and safety element. And then the second CLC requirement that's important is that a transition process to bring all existing cardholders up to the minimum standard by 2020 will be agreed and implemented. So basically that was, those two were saying anybody that's skilled or above needs to have a qualification, which the minimum of which is the MBQ level 2 or whichever, depending on the level that you're operating in. And there has to be a plan to move existing cardholders to that stage also. That was initially by 2020, but the schemes interpreted that as a plan had to be in place by 2020. So by December 19, that's why we announced the big change that all cardholders that had cards previously issued on the occupational assessments and industry accreditation, that from the 1st of January 2020, they would expire at the end of 2024 when the changes take place. I suppose it gave the industry a fairly significant period of time to transition, and it's worthwhile mentioning at this stage that all the other changes that, in the last 3 slides or whatever, weren't just introduced overnight. They had, there were significant time scales introduced in the lead up to them as well. But what cards are impacted? So cards that are impacted are skilled cards, which will need, and I talk about the NBQ level, but I suppose I want to stress that or equivalent follows that every time, really, well, I don't say it. But so skilled cards need to have an NBQ level 2, craft cards an NBQ level 3, supervisor cards either a level 3 or 4, manager cards a level 6, and senior manager cards a level 7. If people have a relevant qualification, there's absolutely no change. They just, do the relevant health and safety training, and the card will be issued for 4 years from the date of the health and safety training, just the way that the scheme has always worked. If a relevant qualification isn't held, those cards will all expire on the 31st of December 2024. So obviously when that was introduced, that started out as being the full 4-year duration, but that's obviously reduced down to now we're issuing cards that have less than 18 months duration or validity on them now. I suppose it's worthwhile to mention that those with cards expiring at the end of 2024 won't have to repeat the health and safety course at that stage. It's still valid for the full 4 years from the date that it's done. But then another important point to make, really, I suppose, is that it doesn't impact labourer cards. And that's important because the labourer cards are, or I suppose the GCO that people maybe still know them as, they have always been the largest category of cards issued. So there's lots of people who aren't impacted by these changes. I've talked about the alternatives, and there are a range of alternatives accepted. City and Guilds craft and advanced craft certificates are accepted, and I suppose that's great because, and I use the term reticently here, but older card holders would have potentially achieved City and Guilds craft and advanced craft certificates because they preceded the NBQs, and I suppose there's lots of older people whose cards are expiring, and City and Guilds is definitely an option for those, as would apprenticeships. Lots of people have completed apprenticeships previously, and we will accept proof of apprenticeship. For the higher level cards, I've already mentioned, we accept degrees, HNDs, HNCs, and professional memberships of various different professional organisations like ICE and MCI or CIOB and things like that. We also have a route for overseas qualifications, because obviously there are a lot of non-national workers who will have, got qualifications in their home country. There's a process, an organisation called ICTIS, that they are in effect a government body in the UK, and they will check the comparability of the qualification that's been completed and determine what level it falls on the qualification framework. Okay, so I want to just move on to some of the guidance that's been provided for industry, and I suppose one of the kind of major step forward was the updating of the website, specifically, it had a section on industry accreditation and how to move off those cards that haven't been based on a relevant qualification. The information contained on the website was produced by a national industry task force, including CSCS, CITB GB, awarding organisations. They all sort of fed into the information. We received it and then kind of Northern Irelandized it, for want of a better way of putting it. We're always a little bit different, as everybody knows, but we try to make it as relevant to Northern Ireland as possible. The website has flowcharts that kind of highlight all the options available, and that's kind of broken down into the various, the blue skill card, the gold craft, supervisor, platinum manager, and black senior manager. I suppose feedback has been really positive. It's just a really useful repository of information. Obviously, we can get the link sent out. It's on the CEF website. You should be able to find it through there, but we can send a direct link out after the webinar. But I suppose it boils down to the kind of main messages, which I'm just going to read from the slide there. So candidates should obviously check to see if they have an NVQ applicable to their current occupation. Lots of people have sort of commented that they actually have a qualification that they didn't really realise that they had done. So obviously check that. I've mentioned the alternative qualifications being accepted, the City and Guilds Craft and Advanced Craft Certificate, overseas qualifications, apprenticeships, construction-related degrees, HNDs, HNCs, and then the professional qualification membership of the professional bodies. I suppose I sort of joke, and it's not really a jokey subject, but there are lots of people hooking in their attics at the minute for these qualifications, and lots of people have unearthed qualifications that they have that they didn't think to be able to find and stuff. So it's worth checking for them. You can contact the various awarding organisations and stuff, and they all have things in place to check for historical qualifications also. But if a candidate doesn't have an accepted qualification, they will have to register for and complete an NVQ. But it doesn't involve going back to college, as there are routes available that include experience, worker assessments, and professional discussion. And then obviously grants may be available from CITB for levy paying employers, and Lynn's going to cover that off a little bit later on. I suppose the not going back to college point is something that we've been saying from the start, and when we've been getting phone calls, and the guidance on the website, it's not earth-shattering, but it's getting people to understand the different ways that NVQs can be achieved has really helped massively. And there's an example. I spoke to a provider recently, and they delivered the level 3 NVQ in occupational work supervision in 4 2-hour sessions. The feedback was really positive. The guys were commenting that it was basically providing information that they had to hand because they were doing it day in, day out on site. But it also made them think about how they do things on site, and it actually resulted in changes. So it's not just getting a qualification for the sake of it. It actually is helping these individuals, and there's the sense of personal achievement, obviously, once they get it also. But I suppose before I move from this slide, if there's one thing I want you to take away from today, it's really that point that the NVQ is not going back to school. It's not, sitting in a classroom with snotty 16-year-olds. It's just demonstrating what you do on a day-to-day basis to a national standard to sort of standardise that everybody meets the same standard. And so just really before summarising, I just wanted to give you an idea of some of the sort of ongoing plans at the minute. Obviously, we'll continue to communicate the message. We have been writing to individuals in advance of their cards renewing to let them know about the changes since the end of 2019 when they were introduced. That means the employer and employee both get direct communication so that they're aware of the steps that they have to take, and that obviously is going to continue to happen the whole way. You know, we always issue the renewal letters that way. We did take the opportunity at the end of June, just past there, to do some messaging around the sort of 18 months to go to the deadline, kind of call to action. You know, similar to the renewal letters that I've just talked about, we wrote to over 5,000 cardholders with short dated cards expiring at the end of 24 to encourage them to take action now to get a qualification. And obviously we're going to repeat that maybe in a 12-month interval and then 6 months before the deadline as well. The webinar today is being recorded and will be available online just in case you can't get sleep some night and want to go back over it again. I did a similar webinar for the Northern Ireland Safety Group in June just past there, and I've also spoke at a CIOB event earlier in the year, and really we're just trying to get the messages out as much as possible. The last 2 points in the slide there, the employer-led NVQ assessors and the appeals process, there has been progress made in these 2 areas just at Joint Council just in June there. We're looking at employers working with already approved NVQ providers to train an employee to assess their own employees. That has a number of benefits in that it helps the training provider who may be struggling to recruit assessors, but it also can result in some savings to the employer, and also potentially if it's a member of staff that the other employees know that's doing the assessment, it might just kind of relax them a little bit and stuff and take away the fear factor. We are trying to get a pilot up and running in this, and obviously if that proves successful, we'll do a case study that would be encouraging other employers to follow suit. But it means that the employer doesn't have to go down the whole route of becoming an NVQ awarding organisation, which is fairly significant. The already approved training provider would do all that kind of back office stuff. It's just the assessment actually that would be carried out by the employee. We've also had an appeals process approved by Joint Council, and that's really aimed at people who have completed qualifications but can't find a record of the qualification. We've had a lot of meetings with CSCS on this because they already run an appeals process, and you know, we're just sort of finalising the mechanics of how it's going to work. But I just wanted to highlight that we're looking at a whole manner of things to help candidates out, regardless of the situation that they're in. Okay, so thanks for listening so far, and you'll be glad to know that this is my last slide, really. I just wanted to finish with a couple of kind of key messages for you to take away from the presentation today. The first one isn't on the slide, but I have mentioned it a few times already, but an NVQ is not going back to school. It's not learning how to be a joiner if you've been doing it for 20 years. It's about demonstrating what you do on a day-to-day basis and that it meets a national standard. NVQs can be done on site. They don't have to be classroom based. So that's, you know, a really key takeaway from today. But overall, though, I suppose there are significant changes to CSR, which you're all aware of. Changes that we fully admit won't be easy for some people, but I think will ultimately leave the industry with a more robust scheme going forward based on national qualifications. The changes aren't a choice. They're needed to retain parity with GB. And GB is on the CSCS Alliance steering group, which is a smaller group of the 38 schemes, and the things that they are looking at to introduce, which we will need to keep pace with, are beyond just NVQ or equivalent qualifications, and that's all being driven by this Grenfell and Hackett and the Building Safety Act. And I suppose CSR, you know, we don't want to prevent anyone from getting a card. You know, I've mentioned the kind of base level card that anybody can get by doing the one-day health and safety, and that will be accepted in Northern Ireland as proof that they have the health and safety training. So if you're working on a public sector site, that meets those requirements. We're working hard to make sure that nobody feels that they can't get a card. And I suppose just finally, the industry, I think here in Northern Ireland is on a journey ultimately. We're behind GB on where they are, and they're very resolute on that you have to have the card for the job that you're doing. This is where we want to be, but we're a bit behind that curve. But there are going to be, as I say, further changes that we need to implement to make or keep pace with the changes in GB. I know there were some questions pre-submitted, and I fear there has been an issue with the chat. I just saw something pop up just before my presentation, so I'll have to check that out. I'm sorry if something has happened with the chat function, but what we're going to do is there were some pre-submitted questions beforehand that we're going to do, but before that I'm going to hand over to Lynn from CITB, who's going to provide some information on CITB grants. But before I hand over, I'd just like to say thanks for listening and get in touch with us at CSR. The team are there to help. So don't be afraid to get in touch, and we'll do what we can to help out. So thanks very much.
Jonathan, can I just mention the chat is working okay now? It's the Q&A session's working.
Oh, that's good. Thanks very much.
Okay.
Hello, good morning. It's Lynn from CITB. I'd just like to thank you all very much for coming today. Jonathan, I can't seem to share my screen just at the minute.
Sorry, Lynn. Yeah, it's
at the end of the slideshow. You're at the end of your slideshow, Lynn.
Okay, thank you. Sorry for keeping you.
No problem.
Okay. Yes, I'm Lynn. I would just like to thank you very much for joining us here today. Just by way of background, we currently have just over 2 million grant support available for the construction industry, and for a direct scheme, there's 1.9.
Sorry, Lynn, can I just stop you? Your screen isn't showing here.
Right, sorry.
That's you now.
Brilliant. Sorry about that, folks. Thank you.
No problem.
For bearing with me. Yes, just over the last 4 years, the CITB in Northern Ireland has been able to retain the same levy rate. Therefore, we've obviously been able to maintain the same level of support for our grants as well. However, due to the uptake and demand on our grants, we've had to prioritise and make some changes this year to manage, obviously, our budget allocation. So for now, I'm going to confirm the grants available from the 1st of September 23 to the 31st of August 24 for existing worker NVQs, for health and safety training, and also for initial industry registration scheme cards. So up on the first screen, the existing worker NVQ grant for NVQ level 2, there's a grant available of £500. For NVQ level 3, there's £750, and then from NVQ level 4 to NVQ level 7, it's £1,000. The health and safety training grant is covered through our short duration off-the-job training grant. The daily rate for that is £100 per person per day. Obviously, should the amount of publicised grant exceed the net cost, the grant will be paid at the actual net cost incurred by the employer. For initial industry registration scheme cards, and that's basically an achievement of initial recognised CSCS UK affiliated scheme card. There's £25 for the white, green, blue and gold, and £50 for the platinum and black card. Unfortunately, there is no grant support available for the renewal of the card or for an upgrade. Now, just to highlight, obviously, the need for our terms and conditions, as Mandy had said in earlier, the essential thing is to ensure that your annual return form is completed by the date. It's normally the last working day in August. Obviously, for new companies being registered with CITB in Northern Ireland, they will be given an opportunity of 4 weeks to return the annual return form. And obviously, the return dates must be adhered to. Otherwise, the employer will be restricted to apprentice grants only. The only category of grant that will be capped for net levy and non-levy payers is our short duration off-the-job training, which is basically for training courses lasting up to 10 days. The health and safety training grant obviously is included within the cap. And just to reconfirm what Mandy had said earlier on in her presentation, that the cap for levy payers is based on the total of levy paid, and the cap for non-levy payers is £500. Just to highlight that all grant claims must be received by CITB within 3 months of commencement of training or upon registration under the course or apprenticeship scheme. Otherwise, the grant will be declined. Employers obviously are encouraged to make grant claims online. That's our wee website, www.citbni.org.uk. All of our documents are also uploaded on the grants section of our website, our grants guide, and there is an application there that you can download and email back into us. But the online process is fairly straightforward, and a member of our team, our grants team, or myself are more than happy to talk you through this process if you've never tried to submit claims online before. Just to highlight, there is a new additional change to our terms and condition. From the 1st of September, all supporting grant information, and what we mean by supporting grant information is like a copy of an invoice and proof of attendance. We do have a great relationship set up with the training providers, and the team do email the training providers to get confirmation that the training has been completed, and we can normally email the training provider to get that or accept that means of confirmation of attendance. So all the short duration supporting information must be received by CITB within 3 months of the training taking place. That's the end of my presentation now, and I would just like to thank you all very much for listening, and I will now hand over to William and Jonathan for the questions and answers. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Lynn. That's great. So we have quite a few questions in here, and I've been busy trying to sort of pull them together and get them in some sort of reasonable order. So I'm going to kick off with a question here. It's been suggested if there's scope for CSR to continue to renew trade and supervisor cards without an NVQ attached to them, if the CSCS logo was dropped, like has been done with the health and safety cards. So that's the first question, Jonathan. You know, is that an option for CEF to drop that?
Okay. We have looked at this, and I suppose ultimately the fear there would be that it almost becomes a kind of two-tier scheme. You know, the based on the national requirement of a qualification versus the old way of cards, the occupational assessment, and ultimately we decided that it wasn't, you know, what the scheme wanted to do, and we didn't feel it was appropriate. So it's not something that we're looking to do at this stage, unfortunately. Okay, thank you. There's a comment made here that there seems to be a lot of skilled tradespeople dropping down to labourers' cards, and the concern would be that in the future we'll have an industry
running around. Everybody's got a labourer's card, and they're working away on their particular skills.
Yeah, I suppose there has been a bit of a trend emerging that people are deciding not to get a qualification, and I suppose that's the individual and the employer's prerogative if they wish to do that. I don't really think a labourer card is the correct card to get in that situation, because if you're a joiner or a painter and decorator, you're not a labourer, so you shouldn't have a card saying you're a labourer. If I did say that we had the health and safety trained card, and that's available for people who just want to do the health and safety training and prove that they have had the health and safety training, which is the requirement. The card isn't the only way of showing competence. It's just an easy and obvious way of doing that. But yeah, it's, I think as it's finished off the presentation, I think we are a bit behind GB in that sense, in that on sites in GB, if you turn up to a site with, for example, a labourer card and say that you're there, whether you're part of the team, the joinery team or painter decorator in sites in GB, it's likely that you won't get on. Anecdotally here, I don't think we're at that stage yet, but it's ultimately, I suppose, where we would want to move to. Yeah.
And just related to that, you mentioned the health and safety trained card. So does that mean that people can have a health and safety trained card and work away on their specific trade, whatever that is?
Well, I suppose where we're coming from there is that so there's a requirement, a contractual requirement for anybody who's doing work on public sector sites to have health and safety training, which happens every 4 years and can be evidenced by CSR or an equivalent card. So people can gain access. It won't prevent them from accessing site based on not having a card, because they meet the requirements there. But it's up to the employer ultimately to determine the competence of the person that they've engaged to do a job. So if they're being engaged as a joiner, it seems to be the example that I always use, but and they don't have a joiner card, the employer would need to be able to demonstrate that they have that they know that person is competent to do that.
Okay, so moving on to the actual qualifications then, John, there's a few questions around this. So the first one here, I think you might have mentioned it in the presentation, but the time scale when the NBQ or equivalent has to be achieved.
Yes, so basically at the end of 2024, the cards need to be issued on the basis of a qualification, an NVQ or equivalent. We do have a couple of cards. I mentioned the experienced manager, but we have an experienced worker, which kind of covers trade type areas, and an experienced manager, which is obviously manager or senior manager, and they are issued to people who have, I suppose, started the journey, so that you have to register on the NVQ, and that would be required as proof, before the card was issued. But that's for someone who's working in one of those areas, has registered on an NVQ qualification before the end of 2024 deadline, but they will be issued a card, and basically in effect that will then be upgraded to the relevant card once that NVQ is achieved.
And how long do they have to achieve that NVQ then? What if they're registered for it?
Well, the card is valid for 4 years, just like the rest of them. But it's unlikely that an NVQ would take 4 years to
hopefully not
to achieve. So that it's just to bridge that gap over the deadline. But it involves someone registering on the qualification, but does recognise that they have previous experience in the area that they're working in.
Okay. Thank you. So a couple more around the sort of qualifications. So we've got a question in here, an example where somebody has CIOB level 3 certificate in site supervisory studies. So, and that certificate states this award confirms that the underpinning knowledge for the level 3 MBQ in construction site supervision has been satisfactorily assessed. So this person who submitted the question is saying that they have been advised this is not accepted in lieu of the MBQ in site supervision. Can you confirm or deny?
I know that we do accept some CIOB qualifications. I'm not gonna, without going and consulting the Oracle, I'm not gonna. I would need, but I would ask that person if they want to reach out to me directly. After, I will certainly look into it and see, you know, what the qualification is and where it sits in the framework and all that sort of stuff. And if we can get hard on the basis of it, you know, I suppose when we're contacted, we are trying, you know, we have limits, you know, we have to comply with the CLC requirements, but we're trying to be as helpful and as lenient as possible. So, you know, I don't know about that particular one, but certainly reach out afterwards and we'll look into it.
So, and in a similar vein, there's another example here where an engineer needs to renew their gold supervisor's card and they've been told their degree isn't acceptable. However, it's mentioned in today's presentation that it isn't acceptable. A degree could be an acceptable alternative. I suppose it depends on what your degree is in, Jonathan.
Well, yeah. So first off, and there's a couple of points I want to make here. We do accept degrees, not for a supervisor card, because there are different levels on the qualification framework. So degrees are acceptable for an academically qualified person card. And so, you know, if the degree is a construction related degree, we can accept it for an academically qualified person card, but unfortunately we can't accept it for a supervisor card because there are different levels on the qualification framework.
Okay. Right. Now, just going back to a couple of questions about older workers, you know, sort of did their apprenticeship like 40 years ago type of thing. So how the question here is, you know, how do you prove that if you've done your apprenticeship so long ago and you don't have your certificates?
So that's, I suppose, yeah, you know, I can understand, you know, people, you know, it's sometimes qualifications or proof can be hard to come by. You know, we do, I mentioned we had just to sort of approve the appeals process, and we're just trying to get that up and running. But I suppose I would encourage anybody that is in that situation to get in contact with us. We're just sort of, you know, we haven't actually got a document yet. We're just working on that at the minute, but it kind of outlines the information that we would require to kind of assess the appeal. And, you know, it's not a technical appeal. We're not asking you to prove that you know how to build a wall if you're a bricklayer or that sort of thing. It's just on the basis of information around the surroundings of when you completed the apprenticeship, for example. So there will be more information forthcoming over the next couple of weeks, hopefully, on that appeals process. And there's an appeals process, or sorry, an appeals panel that is being set up that has members of joint council, so that again, an employer rep and an employee rep via the trade unions that will assess each of those individually, so they can submit that.
Okay. So just on the back of that that question from the same person is saying that if the joiner is 40 years of experience, then as an employer, can that employer assume that they can say that person is fully competent in their trade, therefore a trained card should suffice? I don't quite know what they mean by a trained card should
Maybe
suffice.
Health and safety trained
health
card.
And safety trained card, possibly.
I suppose it sounds a little bit like I'm washing my hands of this, but ultimately it's the employer's, you know, legal duty to ensure that they employ people who are competent, and how that, you know, the assessment of competence is I suppose a can of worms type thing.
Yeah.
That's why I suppose CLC have, you know, they have focused on NVQs because that's a national standard and proof of competence. You know, not saying, I suppose the only thing I would comment is assume that that person is competent is not the right way to do it. You can't assume. You would need to have a way to prove that that person is competent. So it's really how the employer wants to do that. But, you know, I suppose it's maybe a point I want to make. We're not by any means saying that a person who has 40 years joinery experience is not competent because they don't have an NVQ. You know, 100% that's, you know, not the case. What we're saying, it's just that there is a way to prove that they are competent to a national standard by showing what they do on a day-to-day basis. And, you know, my broken record, it's not going back to school, it's just showing what you do. And you know, I suppose maybe I don't know if I laboured it enough in the presentation, but the different routes to NVQs, you know, there's on-site assessments. So if you're sort of in a trade, an assessor can come out and observe you on site, and they basically will have a checklist of things related to your job that you need to show that you're competent. So if you do that every day, you're just doing your job and they're ticking the stuff off as they go. So it's not they're not teaching you to be a joiner, for example, at the end. So just wanted to kind of make that 100% clear.
There's a few more questions coming in, so I'll crack on with these. This is an interesting one here, saying that if a skilled, experienced tradesperson is carrying a labourer's card and their CV can be evidenced by the principal contractor, what's the motivation for the tradesperson to upscale the card to get the full card and get their MBQ to get their card? Any thoughts?
Well,
briefly,
I suppose you know, it's really that an employer probably, and I'm making wild generalizations here, but does an employer want to sit at the site gate and start to review a CV to make an assessment of competence? You know, the qualifications there to make it easy to do that.
Okay. Is the health and safety training card the same as the health and safety touchscreen test that employees are put on before beginning their skills card journey? I think they may be referring now to the skills assessment.
No. So the health and safety, the touchscreen test, I think that was referred to there, William, that would be, so CSCS, the English scheme, have a touchscreen test that tests health and safety knowledge, whereas CSR has health and safety training, which then there's a test at the end of that.
So not the same thing.
It's not the same thing, no.
Okay. Let's just boogie on down here. A few more of these. See if we can get a few in before 11:30. If a person has no qualifications at all, is it right that they can register at the end of 2024 and then potentially have 4 years to complete this MBQ? Could you give examples of on-site assessments as their paperwork? But I think the first part of that is, yes, they could register at the end of 2024 onto an MBQ, and then they would have a card for 4 years, and we'd give them 4 years to get the MBQ. Would that be?
Yeah. Ultimately, you know, as I say, I don't think it would take 4 years for them to achieve the MBQ, but that is an option. The on-site assessment.
And the on-site assessments would be with the training provider, wouldn't it?
Yeah. So like there's lots of, you know, obviously there's the further education colleges, but there's also lots of private training providers offering NVQs out there. The on-site assessment, you know, I'm not going to say that an NVQ doesn't involve paperwork, and I suppose I come from this. I'm not an NVQ expert by any stretch of the imagination. We don't, you know, we're not an awarding organisation or anything for NVQ, so I don't have direct involvement in the, you know, how that process works. But I understand it is, you know, there's lots of different ways. On-site assessment, as I say, is observation on site. There's professional discussion, which tends to be aimed at the kind of higher level qualifications, and that's where an assessor will, you know, discuss the candidate's role and kind of touch on key points and get examples from them. But, you know, there is paperwork involved. I think the providers recognize that the less paperwork, the better, and they try to build that in. But there is they have to be able to evidence, and some of that involves, employer declarations, for example, that the person has been involved with them for so long, and they've done tasks involving A, B, C, and D, and so there is some paperwork involved.
Okay, it's great. There's a couple more I want to try and get to here because I think they're important. There's one here around plant. Got a card issued years ago. There's a whole rake more. Just questions just come in here as well. So we'll keep going till past. So plant card initially issued years ago for 360 and above and below 5 tons. So two cards. I operate both wheeled and tracked excavators using this card. Am I going to have to do 2 NVQs now for tracked and for wheeled machines, or one for tracked and one for wheeled machines, because they've got 2 cards? Is that a bit too specific?
Well, I suppose plant for a start, lots of people, an NVQ has been a requirement since I think 2005 or 2006 for plant cards. So most plant card holders will hold an NVQ already. Again, the plant that I think it's not 2 full NVQs, because ultimately the NVQ is on the excavator, and then there are slight variations in the test depending on the type of machinery, but they're a very similar type of machinery. So I would advise probably to speak directly to the plant provider, who are the experts, rather than me. But I don't think it's 2 distinct, separate NVQs by any stretch of the imagination.
No, I would agree. 1 NVQ. So question here about who are the training providers that will do on-site assessments. I think is that information on your website?
We don't. We haven't at this stage listed the providers that are providing NVQs. It's something we're looking into. I had reached out to the wider training provider network, and to be fair, quite a lot of them didn't respond with the information that we would have needed to be put on. But it's difficult. We don't want to be seen to recommend particular organizations, because we have no, but what I would say is, they're available. There's lots of them out there, and just a quick online search should hopefully help find them.
Okay, that's great. A question here about, can you do NVQ assessments of private dwellings? I don't know. I think you would need to take that up with the assessors, the training providers.
I would imagine, as long as it's under the requirements of the NVQ awarding organisation. If it's a construction site and it's on-site assessment, I guess so. But yeah,
I would have thought so. Okay. Right. Two final questions then. The first one is asking us, could we possibly look at doing one of these webinars for scaffolding companies, skills cards specifically, something around scaffolding? Any thoughts? Is that a big enough area or specialist?
I'm not sure it is enough to do a webinar on, but what I would say is I've been contacted by a number of scaffolding firms recently, and I suppose CSR hasn't issued new scaffolding cards for many years. They have renewed existing ones, and I'm just trying to look into this at the minute to get a better understanding. I think those people have the scissors, probably part 1 and part 2, but it's unclear at this stage whether they would have achieved an NVQ at that stage, and I'm just trying to understand.
So we can watch this space and see if it's justified to do one. Yeah. Okay. Final question, and this one just is a little bit complex, but I think it's quite an important one. So in the case where you have some experienced for tradespeople, they've served their time, they've got they've completed their apprenticeship maybe 20 years ago, and then now they've been promoted up through the ranks, and then maybe now a supervisor or a foreman, but the qualification they've got is maybe in what their core trade was, joinery. We'll use that one all the time. So in that sort of scenario, this question, the person has been advised that to get the updated qualification, they will require ongoing site assessment, which could take up to 6 to 12 months. And they're asking the question, about alternative qualifications are accepted, such as City and Guilds Craft, etc. I think the nub of this question, Jonathan, is I'm a skilled or qualified joiner, and now I'm a supervisor. Can I use my joinery qualification to update my supervisor's card? I think that's it in a nutshell.
Okay. So if somebody has as you say, for example, a City and Guilds Craft in joinery, and they might not, they probably won't even have a gold card issued on the basis of that. They probably just have had an occupational assessment previously. They could get a joiner card, or sorry, we don't call them trade specific cards any longer, but they could get a gold gold craft card based on that qualification. But if they're operating as a supervisor, the advice would be, you're meant to have a card for the job that you're doing at the minute, so they would need to have a supervisor card, which would involve a supervisor qualification. I suppose I made an example in the presentation. There's a provider that I've been speaking to recently who has done a supervisor, a level 3 occupational work supervision NVQ in 4 2-hour sessions, which in the grand scheme of things, it's not 6 to 12 months as mentioned. Which again, boring repeat of it's not going back to school, it's just showing what you do, and that achievement of those NVQs proves, that it is about just showing what you do as a supervisor to get that qualification then.
Okay, that's great. Right, Jonathan, that is all the questions, and I see we're up to 27 minutes past now, so I'm going to hand back to Amanda to wrap us up.
Okay, thanks, William, and thanks everybody for staying with us. Just as a reminder, coming up, this session we are running again in person at CITB premises up Nuts Corner on the 7th of November in the morning. The full details on how to begin to that is on the event section of our website. Before that event, we have a couple of other business improvement events, introductory digital and social media marketing, and that's on the 11th of October, followed by quality control, inspecting skills, concrete and reinforcement at Nuts Corner, and that is on the 26th of October. So a few events there. So if any of your colleagues want to come along to this again in person, the it's on the 7th of November for the CSR, again the same people, the same sort of presentations and that, but we are sending out, as I said at the start, the recording to this full session along with an evaluation form, so you can share the link to that with your colleagues too. On the evaluation form, we'd be grateful if there's any business improvement topics for the future you'd like us to consider. There's sections for you to put those on, and listen, all feedback for our sessions is greatly welcome. I'll also put in the same email to you the link to the website that Jonathan referred to through his presentation for guidance, and also an email contact details for how to get further questions asked if you have anything else that you want to find out directly from Jonathan with the CSR scheme. Okay, well, that's us. Thanks very much to everybody for attending, and hopefully see you at an event again soon. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.